The chair calls the Education Policy Committee to order for Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. And we do have a quorum now. Thank you. And Representative Falconer, have you had a chance to review the minutes for Wednesday, March 26, 2025? And if so, would you move approval of the minutes?
I have. I looked them over. They look great to me, so I moved the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Falconer. Representative Falconer moves approval of the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the minutes for Wednesday, March 26, 2025 are approved. All right, members, today we will be reviewing our DE Omnibus Bill, taking public testimony and member discussion. We will not be taking any formal action, including adopting the DE. Those procedural measures will be taken tomorrow when Chair Jordan has the gavel. Are there any procedural questions before I ask nonpartisan staff to walk through the bill, members? Okay, we're good to go then. So Ms. Para, I always do that to you. Ms. Para will walk through the DE1 amendment. Members, if you have any questions, please get my attention or my assistant here, and we can stop during the walkthrough. This is more of a mini omnibus bill, minibus. It's a minibus bill. So we are not pressed for time. So Ms. Para.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. You do have your bill summaries in your packets, just if you want to refer to that as we go along. Article 1 is the general education article, and the first 3 sections amend the post-secondary enrollment options statute, that's PSEO. Section 1 provides that charter schools are eligible for PSEO and requires a post-secondary institution to notify the pupil school as soon as practicable if the pupil withdraws or stops attending the course. Section 2, again, adds charter school students for PSEO eligibility. Section 3 strikes obsolete language limiting post-secondary institution advertisements and recruitment of secondary pupils. Section 4 modifies the Online Instruction Act. It modifies the definition of enrolling district to refer only to districts and charter schools and allows a state-operated school to qualify as a supplemental online course provider. Section 5 expands adult basic education program approval term from 5 to 6 years. Article 2 is the education excellence article. And Section 1 requires the commissioner to report language development outcomes of the target language of instruction other than English for students that are in dual immersion programs or programs where the objective is to improve or maintain the student's native language. Section 2 modifies the short call substitute teacher program and renames it. It's currently a short call substitute teacher pilot, and this pilot program, this renames it to the short call emergency substitute teacher program. It makes the program permanent, and it's a program that allows qualifying education support personnel or paraprofessionals to obtain a short call substitute teacher license. It modifies the teacher rate of pay and how long a short call substitute teacher under the program can cover a particular assignment. Section 3 modifies the kindergarten fall assessment statute. It delays by 1 year the date that districts and charter schools have to begin complying with changes that were being phased in. Section 4 is the Minnesota Math Corps program. It requires Minnesota Math Corps to use evidence-based instructional support to evaluate and accelerate student learning on foundational mathematics skills and adds a definition of evidence-based. Article 3 is the charter schools article, and this is a revisor instruction. It's just one section instructing the revisor to renumber a subdivision on public accounting and reporting, charter management organization, educational management organization agreements as a new statute. Article 4 is education innovation, and Section 1 is modifies the hours of instruction requirement for districts. It allows a district to include in the hours of instruction for secondary school students experiences that allow students to earn academic credit are available to all students and are supervised, coordinated, and verified by a qualified teacher. Some language that is new in this version here than from what was heard in committee. There's a new paragraph saying that nothing in the language here allows a district to unilaterally modify the terms and conditions of employment of a teacher that are provided in a collective bargaining agreement to accommodate educational experiences outside the regular school day and week. This section also requires the department to review its policies and structures to ensure they support providing a range of educational opportunities to students, and provides that expansion of hours of instruction does not modify pupil units or provide additional pupil units for the educational experiences that are allowed under this section. Section 2 is the experiential and applied learning opportunities for students, and this prohibits the Commissioner of Education from approving or denying a school board adopted experiential and applied learning program. The next two sections modify the PTEC statute, and they together they allow a school board to adopt a PTEC program without the commissioner, without having to apply to the commissioner for approval. So the commissioner's approval would be limited to a grant when an appropriation is available for the PTEC grants. And Section 5, finally, is a revisor instruction. It instructs the revisor to codify a new chapter of statutes relating to education innovation. So those would be like the first statute that is in the article, the second one on experiential and applied learning opportunities, and certain other statutes would be in the 124F chapter. Article 5 is special education. And it's one section establishing a process to file a complaint over a violation of the federal special education law. It allows an organization or individual to file a complaint with the department's Office of General Counsel. It requires the department to address failures to provide appropriate services and appropriate future provision of services when resolving a complaint and finding a failure to provide appropriate services. It outlines investigation and other procedures for resolving a complaint and requires the department to set aside an issue or complaint that is also the subject of a due process hearing. It also allows an organization or individual to file a complaint alleging a failure to implement a due process hearing decision. Article 6 is health and nutrition. And the first three sections relate to epinephrine in school. So you'll see in several spots in each of those three sections replacing a reference to epinephrine auto-injectors with a more generic reference to epinephrine delivery systems, which would include the newer epinephrine inhaler that's now available. And then in Section 3, it also requires the Commissioner of Health to provide a district or school with a standing order for distribution of epinephrine delivery systems. And finally, in Section 4, that amends the Summer Food Service Program statute, modifying a reference to the applicable federal regulations. Article 7 is the state agencies article. Section 1 modifies the directory information statute that's part of Chapter 13. The data practices statute, it requires educational agencies or institutions sharing personal student contact information and directory information for students in special ed to comply with the requirements for parental consent under federal regulations. Section 2 requires the department to use the standard rulemaking process rather than an expedited rulemaking process when adopting rules for academic standards. Section 3 strikes a requirement that Pels be report on the performance of teacher candidates on assessment of knowledge and skills. Section 4 modifies a reporting requirement for the teacher mentorship and retention program. Section 5 the next several sections modify the Office of Inspector General statute of the Department of Education. So Section 5 adds preventing and detecting theft to the purpose and duties of the OIG. Section 6 modifies definitions that apply to the OIG statute. So it modifies the definition of abuse, defines excluded, and modifies definition of fraud and provides examples. Section 7 requires participants to give the OIG immediate access without prior notice to any locations of potential record storage and the records themselves, and to any records related to department programs. It provides that denying access to requested records is cause for immediate suspension of payments, and allows the OIG to copy any record related to a department program. Section 8 modifies the grounds for sanctions. Section 9 is data practices, relates to data practices that modifies a cross-reference to applicable statutes. So it now references the new statute governing the OIG and investigative data and comprehensive law enforcement data instead of the statutes governing data collected by a government entity as part of an active investigation related to civil action. And it strikes audit data from the list of types of data governed by those cross-reference statutes. Section 10 provides immunity from civil liability to a person who makes the good faith report or participates in an investigation. It requires the reporter's name identifying information to be kept confidential after an investigation is complete. Section 11 provides that this subdivision doesn't authorize reducing or pausing state or federal aid to a district, charter school, cooperative unit, library, library system, or library district. It establishes requirements for and consequences of excluding a participant from a department program. Section 12 requires the commissioner to provide a program participant notice when excluding a participant from a department program. Section 13 allows a program participant excluded from a department program to request a contested case hearing. Section 14 provides that the OIG, this subdivision of the OIG statute, does not authorize withholding payments of state or federal aid to, again, a district, charter school, cooperative unit, library, library system, or library district. It requires the Inspector General to recommend to the Commissioner to withhold payments to a participant if any department program, to a participant in a department program if there's credible allegation of fraud or theft for which an investigation is pending. It requires the Commissioner to notify the participant when withholding payments, that it prohibits an appeal of withholding payments. Section 15 relates to excess tax increment. It requires the county auditor to certify by February 1 to the Commissioner of Education the amount of any excess tax increment that accrued to the district during the preceding year. Section 16 modifies a reporting requirement for the Alternative Teacher Preparation Grant Program. And Section 17 also relates to data. It adds the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General to the list of agencies that may receive data from the Unemployment Insurance Program without the consent of the subject of the data, for investigations related to fraud, theft, waste, and abuse or other misuse of public funds. And Madam Chair, that's the D.
Thank you, Ms. Perrin. I think we owe you a bottle of water for having to go through all of that all at once, but at least it was fairly short. So before we move on to testifiers, I just want to say some thank yous here. First of all, to Chair Jordan and members, both sides of the table here. Thank you so much for your discussions, your input, and the work, and that we can come up with a bill like this that we can all agree upon, and I appreciate that. And I also want to say a special thanks to Mr. Lee and Mr. Withers here, who worked hard all weekend, and I think Mars was probably involved in that and others, so whoever was involved, thank you, because without your work, we would not be able to do this as well. So appreciate that very much. So we do have some testifiers. I'll remind the testifiers to state their name and organization for the record and then proceed. So we'll start with Adosha Uni and Kalik Rogers. Those two can make their way up. I see Adosh, so you go ahead and start, Mr. Uni, whenever you are ready. You know the routine.
Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Adosha Uni. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Department of Education, and I First, want to say the commissioner does send his apologies to the committee that he was not able to provide these comments today, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide these comments in his place. So thank you for allowing me time today to speak on the House Education Policy Bill. It's a common feeling that every session is different from all others, but this one has truly been unique. And on behalf of the commissioner, I want to commend the co-chairs, committee members, and staff for working bipartisanly in putting together a policy bill. That is no small feat. We next thank you for including so much of the governor's education policy bill. We feel strongly that the provisions we put forward this year demonstrate our agency responsibility to statutory integrity and make clear that accountability matters for all of our public schools and live our values as a state education agency. While we know our entire bill is not included here, I do want to thank you for the provisions we do see reflected here. Thank you for including provisions making clear in law that charter schools and charter school students and students enrolled in tribal contract schools are also able to access rigorous coursework activities such as PSEO, and we encourage you to consider those changes for courses to agreement as well. The provisions that allow MDE to approve ABE programs for up to 6 years will allow their approval period to align with other states' approval timelines. Thank you for including MDE's proposal to codify in state law the rights of parents and families of students with IEPs that IDEA currently provides for in federal guidance. And thank you for including a number of MDE's proposals to strengthen and maintain our OIG and their necessary authorities to effectively investigate suspicions of fraud, waste, theft, and abuse. And we would ask the committee to consider adopting the rest of the provisions pertaining to the OIG if possible. Since the initial creation of the MDE OIG in 2023, we worked together with the legislature to enhance and clarify authority, and this continued partnership is critical to upholding program integrity and preventing fraud. We would appreciate continuing the conversation with members pertaining to charter school accountability and transparency. The proposals the agency put forth in our policy bill work together to create a more robust and accountable system for all of our students in charter schools and set more of our schools up for success. A few other items, just briefly, that we'd like the committee to reconsider for inclusion bear mentioning. Clarifying that academic standards are not grade-specific, benchmarks are. Allowing tribally controlled schools to be eligible for grants just like districts and charters. Updates to the non-exclusionary discipline and anti-bullying statutes. And parent and student empowering special education provisions around prior written notice and parent consent for special education services. I'll just conclude by saying this session was truly once in a generation session, which presented unique challenges, but the committee's bill before us is a demonstration of the sincere engagement the committee members have had with one another, MDE and the education partners voicing their experiences in committee. MDE looks forward to continuing this partnership through the next 7 weeks as the bill receives further scrutiny in the bodies. And again, thank you for putting this bill together, for your work, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of you to meet the tasks our constituents have given us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Uni. And Kalik Rogers, welcome to the committee, and go ahead and introduce yourself and begin.
Absolutely. Hello, Chair and committee members. My name is Kalik Rogers, and I represent youth that we're working with across the state in urban, rural, and suburban Minnesota. We want to thank you again for allowing the young people space and time to be heard on this important cause, which is a 8-word clarification bill that's focused on addressing the growing crisis in opioid poisoning and overdose amongst young people. This bill reflects one of the number one legislative priorities of the young people we work with across the state. These are from young people who've experienced the pain and loss of friends and family members to opioids. And they've stepped forward with research, including testimonies and bold ideas on how to prevent further loss. They've been joined by doctors, public health experts, educators who all agree that this small clarification can have a big life-saving impact. We've also heard from state legislators on both sides of the aisle who have heard and have shared deeply personal stories of loved ones affected by opioid poisonings and overdose, and many have signed up as bipartisan co-authors on this bill. Their support reflects the reality of this issue and the touching stories that cover the whole entire state of Minnesota, including rural, urban and suburban communities alike. This is a life-saving issue, and we hope that you include House File 2023 in the omnibus bill. But if not, that there is a possibility that we have that this will be ensured to be heard in the House floor, as this is an opportunity that we understand. I hope the whole state understands that this is the ability for young people to get their voice out here, and not for them just to have the ability to. This isn't a "Don't Do Dare" campaign. This is, you know, a reality that our state is facing, that many of us are urgently asking for this clarification to include, you know, opioid recognition, training, and education, and the state standards. So thank you for your time, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And we have plenty of time here. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to testify concerning this bill? Okay. Nope. Well, members will have discussion, and I'll just say before we do, there are, you know, areas here that are missing. One glaring one would be the READ Act, but that's purposeful because we have agreed to run that separately as a separate bill. So there are other items here that aren't in this particular minibus bill that will run, or hopefully run separately. Obviously, some of the attendance bills have gone on to education, finance, and so on. So we do have other issues that will be covered, but this is our minibus bill as we have it right now. So I know Representative or Chair Jordan has comments. Are there any other comments or questions? Representative Bierman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Kalik Rogers' comments just now on the bill regarding the opioid issue. The opioid epidemic has been affecting and hitting our country. We're in our third decade. And it's an issue that is impacting our students, and one that, as he eloquently said, they are asking us to do something. And what we can do is apply education standards to teach them the recognition, to teach them the actions that they can take, and to understand how to administer naloxone, which is the #1 thing right now that has bent the curve on the opioid epidemic. Everybody should know how to do that. Everybody here at this table. And having that information, I mean, I meet people all the time. We've seen them in health committee. We've seen them in this committee that have saved people's lives. And I think having that in the schools, just a brief tutorial would be very impactful for them, and to have this training in the health curriculum, I fully support that. That's something that, you know, we can address the opioid epidemic from a lot of ways, and we have for 3 decades, and look where we are. We've hit some of the highest death rates in the country in the last couple of years. So we need to utilize the education that is available so that students can see it in their friends. Students can take that action and know how to access and address and treat their friends and family members or complete strangers. I have a niece who has used naloxone twice for people. And it's stunning to me when she tells me these stories. And so I think I just encourage all of you to vote in support of this bill wherever we can do it, to make this a reality so that, you know, we can answer the need and the request of our students who are coming to us, as you heard in testimony here from 3 students who said, #1 bill at Youth and Government was teach us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative DePel.
Thank you, Chair, and I wanted to agree with Representative Bierman about naloxone. We have constituents in my district who have lost children to overdoses, and as somebody who went through a rough patch, I was an alcoholic by the time I was 13 and did a lot of drugs in my childhood. Seeing that and having friends in that sphere. Certainly difficult, scary things happen, and at that point, you're really just a kid. You don't understand the ramifications of the choices that you're making, but to have an option and the ability to potentially save the life of your friend. There's a specific constituent who lost their son, and their friend helped them get something that they thought would help their toothache. And unfortunately, that child ended up overdosing, and their friend got scared and ran and left their friend in a bedroom because they were afraid of what maybe would happen to them in this circumstance. Now, if this existed, if that training existed and they understood the uses of naloxone, they may have made a different choice. They may have called 911 and that child's life could have been saved. So whatever we can do to save the life, especially of kids who don't understand, and boy, if you look at the fentanyl crisis, and it just takes the smallest amount of fentanyl to kill somebody, it's just terrible. So we need to do everything that we can to educate kids on, first, the danger, because that's different than even anything that I faced when I was in school. And it's so accessible. It's very cheap, and unfortunately very accessible through social media and other avenues. So it's a big issue. We absolutely need to do everything that we can for the youth and for relatives, friends, and the like. Thanks.
Representative Gottfried.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I won't take long. I just want to thank both Representative Bierman and Representative DePel for your moving statements right now. And it really does speak to what I want to take 60 seconds to say. The first day that I got here, Chair Bennett, you said that this is the best committee. Yeah, I think you probably said it flippantly, but this. but maybe you did mean it. But here's the thing. Thus far, in the committee assignments that I have had, this minibus bill really is a outward display, and I think these testimonies are an outward display of earnest attempts to act in a bipartisan manner since I have been here. And I just want to appreciate and thank every member here for making this the best committee that I am able to serve on, for that earnest display and attempt to act in a bipartisan manner. So I want to thank our co-chairs here, and I want to thank every member around this table. There's more work to be done. I'm sure we'll be at each other's throats at some point, but right now I think we can revel in the fact that we are putting forward a good policy package. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gottfried. And I'm sure I'm not biased, but this is the best committee. So Representative Keeler.
I was just going to second that. I was going to get on the record that I'm sure that was an intentional statement. I guess a couple things I want to point out. One is Representative Mueller. Thank you for the work that you did on the substitute language. I know that we've talked a lot about my experience being the substitute coordinator and how hard that is. And I know it's still a work in progress. We're not necessarily to the end goal of what we want to do, but I do really appreciate that it feels like 5 years of conversation. Now we actually have some policy that we can start to move forward. So I do appreciate you and the work you've done in the committee. And I want to tell a story because I think sometimes we have committee hearings and we hear things and then we don't really know how they resonate in our community. And the EpiPen conversation and the nasal EpiPen, or that, they're not called EpiPens if they go on your notes, but was really interesting to me because when I went back to Moorhead in the Hornbachers while I was getting breakfast, 2 different constituents came up to me and acknowledged how much of a change that would make in their life. And I just don't know if sometimes, at your grocery stores, right, you realize that the work that we do and the changes that we're making here will save lives. And I think that that's really powerful. I'm not going to make any more statements on what has already been said in the other component, but I thought it was really cute because it was like a little 10-year-old girl that knows what we're doing in this work. And I think I'll end on the fact that I do think it is the greatest committee. And I think it's because we end up having youth sit at our table who really take and craft legislation and build the Minnesota that they want to see. And I love that we're welcoming to that. We meet them with smiles, you know, in the stress of our days. At the end of the day, we're always welcoming to the youth that end up in our committee. And I really love this group for that and the work that we continue to do, and I think we're doing really good at potentially saving lives in Minnesota through education. So thank you, chairs.
Thank you, Representative Keeler. And Chair Jordan.
Thank you, Chair Bennett. I guess before I get into sort of concluding remarks, if you were excited about overdose education, just wait for tomorrow. We're going to have it as a standalone bill tomorrow. And the idea behind that and a few of the other standalone bills is I think there's a lot. I think one of the lessons of this committee is that there's a lot of bipartisan agreement on things. And one of those bipartisan agreement areas is that we can send standalone bills to the General Register and we don't need to have these giant policy bills, which I personally like. I like learning more about each individual policy. I would like to see more of that. And that's something that that Chair Bennett and I agreed on and have really tried to do. And so the health standards bill related to overdose and fentanyl is going to be tomorrow. Hopefully as a standalone, it'll get much more time to sort of spotlight that issue for us. And if, we run out of time or something happens, there's definitely bipartisan agreement that that's something that needs to be moving forward. It's something that's important to me. It's just not in this bill because it's its own bill. And that's a thing I'm excited about. So I'm glad that everyone feels really excited about that. So it's not missing because it's not moving forward. It's just not in this bill because it's its own bill. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that's what the plan is with that. I think this is the best committee, and it's interesting because it's 2 first-time chairs. And so thank you to all the members for working on this. I hope there's a lot of reflection here, and I think both sides of the aisle can really see their work reflected in this bill. It's a good little education policy bill. And so I guess I will conclude kind of thoughts here with some thank yous, and we wouldn't be here without our staff. So thank you to Ms. Para and Mr. Strom for all of your work, all of your time meeting with all of us and answering all of our questions. Thank you to all of our partisan staff, Mr. Withers, Mr. Lee. Thank you to all the members too. You worked really hard, and I hope you see that work reflected in this bill. And then I'll just really end by saying the work continues and really end with a thank you to you, Chair Bennett. It's a good committee. It's the best committee, and you're right. So thank you. And thank you to also to our researchers as well. Thank you, Mars, for all your work this weekend as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Jordan. All right, well, members, no motions were made here, so we're simply going to end the discussion and resume consideration of the DE1 amendment tomorrow. And Chair Jordan will be chairing the committee at that point, and then possibly some other items that remain under discussion. So that concludes today's agenda. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 2nd. With that, I'm sorry, we have. It's like, we can all celebrate right now. So our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 2nd, and with that, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you.